Today I'm going to read you a fairy tale. It has all the elements of a proper fairy tale. A prince and a princess, a castle, and a wicked stepmother. But there is something a bit different about my story. It is written in Belvish. Belvish is a curious language spoken by about 50,000 people in the world. There is no dictionary, and it sounds surprisingly similar to Standard English, but many of the words have a meaning that you will not find in the Oxford English Dictionary. If you do not speak fluent Belvish, you may find certain details of my story confusing. Why is there a waving Mexican? And what prompted the choice for the wicked stepmother's hometown? If you do speak Belvish, then you must be a fellow ringer. So welcome. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. Fairy Story, written by Mary Jones and kindly illustrated by Gerald Thomas. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful girl. I know you would all like her to have been called Sally, but she wasn't. She was called Mabel. She came from a royal line of kings and queens and lived a golden life in the palace with her parents, somewhere in Kent, close to Canterbury. Sometimes they wore crowns, but only on special occasions. They were an active family, rarely inside, and spent their days fishing for gudgeon, cobio, on the river, cartwheeling on the palace lawns, and joining in the local hunt. Mabel was always running in and running out. She found it hard to stay still in one place. And there's the picture of the king, who is not convinced that another tea of gudgeon is going to be acceptable. So it was very cruel when, on her mother's death and the remarriage of her father to a single lady from Hastings, that Mabel was banished to a chamber at the top of a tall tower. It was shaped like a circle because the tower was round, and there was little opportunity for her to indulge in her favourite pastimes. No more backstroke across the lake, nor catching hold of kite tails in the wind. Mabel was very sad. Her father made sure that she was supplied with sufficient art materials, and she managed to fashion her own kaleidoscope from bits and bobs. If she stood on a box, she could peer between the louvres of the single high window and see what was going on in the countryside surrounding her prison. Once a friendly Mexican waved to her. At least she thought that he did, but she might have been wrong. And there's the castle where the princess lived. To prevent her escaping, her stepmother had the stairs to the chamber removed. All provisions had to be raised and lowered via a basket and a flax rope, which was attached to a large wheel in the room. The pulley mechanism was a little clunky, but one gets used to these things. She had to call down the tower when she needed something. She would have preferred to have called up, and wait for little Bob, the loyal palace servant, to set the things in the basket, whereupon a few whole pulls raised the basket all the way up. Once he sent her a companion, a weasel, which made her life that much more bearable, but how she longed to be rescued. One day, a true prince came calling at the palace. I bet you want his name to be Abel, but it wasn't. His name was Dick Whittington's. He knew that a striking princess had lived there, and so it was a great surprise to find her gone. He suspected that the recent alliance between the king and the odd lady from Hastings might be at the bottom of the change. He asked around, and his query chimed a bell with a passing Mexican caterer who remembered that he had once waved to a lady in the nearby tower. Perhaps that was the young lady that Whittington's was seeking. Dick decided to investigate. Fired up with excitement, and under cover of darkness, he led his horse, the horse was called Hagdyke, round to the back of the tower, tied her up to a handy frame, and pulled on the rope that was lying there. There was a muffled movement from above, so he called up softly, "Is anyone there?" Mabel was unsure of what to do. Was it a trick by her wicked stepmother? But after months of social isolation, how she longed to touch and stroke another human. There is only so much cuddling a weasel will stand. She decided to risk it and lowered the basket with a note. It was written on blue-lined paper and read, "I am trapped in this tower. Could you please rescue me and take me to your place?" Dick wrote back on red-lined paper, "It would be my delight, but how will I get you down, as there are no stairs? We need a method to facilitate your flight." And there's a picture of the prince pulling on the rope, and he's borrowed the Mexican's hat to shade his eyes, and he's encouraging the princess to take the plunge. Because Mabel was so strong and athletic, it was decided that she could dodge down the rope if Dick held it sufficiently taut. No snaking could be risked. It was slow work, but she climbed all the way down and fell into Dick's expectant arms. "Ah, Diddums," he murmured into her ear. He had a slight speech impediment. "You are safe at last." With the weasel tucked into her bosom, all three clambered onto the patient Hagdyke, who was strong enough to carry a triple load, and they headed for home. When Mabel failed to call for her breakfast the following morning, her father came to the tower to look for her and was devastated to find her gone. But that is what might happen if you get spliced with an odd single lady from Hastings. Needless to say, Mabel and Dick lived happily ever after and raised lots of little Whittingtons, a whole band in fact. And there they are, the Whittingtons, going round and round and round. The end.